the Gospel that we've just read, we have the translation of the Jerusalem Bible that the angels are always in the presence of my Father in heaven. I checked in the Greek and in the translation back into imagined Hebrew, and they're both clear that the words used would have been behold the face of. One can see why they got into that mode of translation in the Jerusalem Bible, because they say things like that when they want to say what we say in the presence of, by using the expression in the face of, before the faces of, actually in the plural. But nevertheless, it's a pity that we lose the force of the original, because the Lord said that and wanted to say that. And therefore, these angels that are our personal and invisible friends have, as it were, two fields of simultaneous vision. They're watching over us, but they're watching also the face of the Father in heaven, as the Lord tells us. This is vision beatific, that we're supposed to be heading for. And if we don't, we'll have an awful look at eternity in dark and negative, and people hardly ever think of it. What's the point of anything at all if we don't see what we're made to see after death? That's the big question. Everything else can be kept somehow in relationship with that, and if it's not, we're forgetting the meaning of life. And the angels are there to make sure that we get there. There's a reason for it, because we are actually very fragile. We can lose our soul very easily, very easily. And we forget that we've been given discreet warnings about that, actually through children of which the Gospel speaks. Think of Fatima. The smallest was very small when she was shown hell. And if they were shown that, it's to warn us, adults, who think we've grown up from that kind of fairy tale, that it's still there and open for business. And Our Lady, more recently in time, has warned us, I think through Medjugorje, that souls are dropping into hell like snowflakes to the ground. Now just think what that means. She is seeing from where she is in heaven this planet, round as a ball, and all the time this cloud of souls coming out of it. And she sees the proportion. And if she is saying that, she is warning us that it's very serious business. Because each one is an eternity. Each one is a soul waking up to that shock and realizing it hasn't made it. Michelangelo captured that moment very well in the Sistine Chapel. There's one in particular, one can see it, this soul that has just realized that it's not made it. And it's a look of complete and utter despair. Now, if we don't think about that, and we think about all kinds of other things all the time, it means that we too aren't aware that our life is a very serious game. So the angels are there for a reason, and they're all the time trying to prod us, protect us, shield us, and nudge us, all the time. And we can sharpen our awareness of those nudges by asking for the grace of sensitive souls. The Holy Spirit pushes and pulls, nudges and inspires, gives thoughts in our mind, but our angels too can do something of the same. And they can also help us, and the more we invoke them, the more they will. Finding lost objects, for instance. Some years ago, I was with a dear friend, now an elderly couple who used to help me a lot when I was starting. I had to have some help just before I went to Mass that day. And it was already the beginning of the time when we were recording these things. And for some reason, I couldn't find an essential bit I needed. It was the battery for the camcorder. And we were desperate because the moments were running out. Where could it have gone? So quietly but intensely, I prayed my guardian angel, you can see this, please get us to see it ourselves. And a nudge came, actually, I think I invoked her guardian angel as well, and she got the inspiration, might it be down there? It was the last place one would have thought about. It was underneath the whole load of stuff that was there, completely hidden, and that's where it was. But that was angelic intervention. Some years ago, when I was guest master at the monastery, I had one guest who was very much into his faith, and he shared an experience with me which had happened some time earlier. Now, this is going back before the time of mobile phones. He, at that time, that particular day, really had to get in contact with his son. For some reason, I forget what the story was exactly, but this bit I remember, and there was nothing else he could do but send his own guardian angel to his sons, and it worked. So this is something that we're completely unaware of, which the great saints like Padre Pio and the Cure Vaz were very much aware of. Send me your guardian angel. And I listened to a testimony by Fra Alexio, who had been his nurse and accompanier for many years, and he had to accompany him in all his movements because ladies would take bits of his habit if there was no shield out of piety, but it was a misunderstood piety, but they'll do that kind of thing. They'll clip off a tiny bit of his habit and keep it as a relic, so it was dangerous to leave him without accompaniment, so he had to shield him when he was going from A to B, and that meant getting up a second time in the night to get him from A to B at a certain point. So he would go back to sleep and had to put his alarm clock on, but once or twice Padre Pio said he wasn't coming, so he had to send his guardian angel, and he would wake up this Fra Alessio straight away. And eventually he said to him, "Why don't you come?" "Well, I didn't get my alarm clock to work properly. It's a very poor alarm clock." "Well, you must get a new alarm clock," he said. "I'm tired of sending you my guardian angel." But it was working. And you can tell that to children if they, for instance, in a crowd lose Mammy and Daddy, which is a big drama for a child. Send your guardian angel to that of Daddy and Mammy. And I've heard actually on a plane between Medjugorje and here years ago, I think it must have been the first time I ever went there, 1995. And this lady, a lovely lady, was telling me how she had lost her husband, but she was still youngish. And this person was coming into her house for some professional reason. And he was obviously fairly fond of her and wouldn't say so, but she copped on. And without putting me in any kind of embarrassment, she said, "I know what you're thinking. Well, if it's to be, ask your guardian angel to talk to my guardian angel and to give us a sign." And I forget what the sign was, but it came loud and clear immediately, and they both understood, and they married. And it was a happy marriage, and she was still alive after losing that second husband at the time, and still a very pleasant person to talk to. And all this founded in angelic mode, a higher notch than just the human, a good wave of operation if we want to sort out a marriage, or a vocation for that matter, because it can happen also when we have to talk to superiors, bishops, or whatever it might be. Now, to get back to the question of this angel world, it's a very real one, and some saints have had a lot of contact with their guardian angel. Not far from where we were in Rome, there was now it would have been the house of the family, but then it became the convent of Saint, she was eventually Frances of Rome. Now, she was in continuous dialogue with her guardian angel and would often see him. So they were working hand in hand to do something which humanly was impossible at a time of plague and illness and death in Rome. She became eventually the patron saint of Benedictine Oblates. Others have also had a lot to do with the angelic world. Now, when one is close to the altar, a lot is going on. Already, if one comes into a place where the Blessed Sacrament is reserved, one is coming into an invisible court of protection. There's a cushion there around the tabernacle of angelic presences and wings. One can almost pick it up and feel it if one comes, for instance, into a quiet chapel at the hours of night, especially if it's a small chapel, close geographically to the Lord where you can get right up. But there are things which people have been told or seen, this both in East and West. St. John Chrysostom knew roughly the situation. He must have had some grace, and he did warn people that when one is in the Divine Liturgy, one is coming up against a whole angelic presence there, and one needs a massive respect even afterwards there's a lingering grace that one should approach even the space with awesome fear. Now, strangely enough, again, children can be our eyes. I've known little children, a few, who have had a lot, without realising it, to do with the beyond, because it goes at adolescence, but they have gifts early on and they see things and hear things sometimes, if they're very pure and from very pure families. But there's one case which is very recent in time. I happened to be given this by a friend. It happened, now it's recent, very recent, I forget which year it was, one of these last years. It was this very feast, the Feast of the Guardian Angels. And this obviously was a very good child. This was in America now, and in a Catholic school, and they were being well educated. It must have been the first Friday, because they all went into, and there was a college chapel, they went there, and things were done very well, obviously, and they were being taught on every level to behave in church, and they were receiving the sacraments in a state of grace. Now, the interesting thing is that this particular girl had a very strong devotion to her guardian angel. She had a friend, and her friend was about to sit right next to her, and she said to her friend, "Don't sit there, that's where my guardian angel is." So, anyway, she obeyed, a bit dumbfounded. But then it all happened. Her eyes were really opened during the celebration, and she saw right through all these angels around. Each child had his or her angel, and she could see what the angels were doing right through the celebration, and there was movement. The angels were happy or sad, according to what each one was bringing up at the offertory mentally, how much they had of engagement and merit and prayer. Some were miles away, some were very intense, and the angels could tell the difference. By the way, that also was shown to St. Bernard of Clairvaux, who saw the heads of the monks in choir and angels above their heads, and he saw how some angels had a lot to carry up and others very little, and he saw that they were seeing how much engagement was going on mentally with the psalms. I shut that parenthesis. So she then saw that when it came to the Sanctus and the Eucharistic prayer, there was a lot of movement. It was all orientated towards the altar, and she could see that at a certain point the angels of all present were joining other angels physically all in one cloud, all gazing in one direction. She saw close to the priest a very strong and powerful angel, which we understand to be St. Michael, and she also saw, but behind, discreetly, our Blessed Lady herself. And the way that she behaved was indicating that the priest was doing something that she will never do. Interesting. But she was there and aware. So this then went on, and she was amazed at the beauty of what she saw at the consecration, when heaven and earth were truly holding hands, engaged fully, and all this invisible world which she was shown on our behalf. The Lord sometimes half lifts the veil so that we may sometimes remember what every day we actually forget and don't even dream about. I am sure that if we upped our volume with regard to rapport with our guardian angel, we too would have more surprises. They're there and they're only waiting for a word. We can also invite them to praise and pray with us. One becomes aware of that actually in the monastic life, the power of gratuitous praise, in which we're repeating on earth the Hagios, Hagios, Hagios of the angels in heaven. And by the way, some of the prayers that we have on earth echoes very much that of the angels in heaven. The Sanctus that we sing on earth was heard by Isaiah the prophet when he was called. The echoes of the Apocalypse. And in the Eastern liturgy, of which we have an echo on Good Friday at the Veneration of the Cross, and we have it now in the Divine Mercy Chaplet. It's the invocation of the thrice holy God. Was heard by the monks in the desert and came into the liturgy. Holy God, Holy Mighty One, Holy Immortal One, have mercy on us. And that is repeated and repeated in the Eastern Rite. And we have it, as I say, on Good Friday in the Western Rite. But it's a time precisely when we're learning from heaven how to praise. Gloria in Excelsis. It was an angelic song which was heard. A whole throng of angels was heard praising God. We have it and we use it. That's how close we are to heaven when we're engaged in the divine liturgy. Let's never make of this a place of encounter for each other. For true encounter with each other happens in angelic mode, when our souls, the best part of us, really embraces something beyond. And in that, accidentally, we also embrace each other. This happy clappy mode of holding hands does nothing but detract. It's divine what we're doing, angelic, and we must behave accordingly. Moses was warned, take off your shoes from off your feet, the ground on which you tread is holy ground.